Welcome to the House of Takes, a late night show, live and on tape, as I like to say, from the heart of the Silicon Valley. We are truly the only show in North America that predicted about 4 weeks ago that the Los Angeles Clippers were probably going to be the hardest team to beat coming out of the Western Conference. And it appears that Charles Barkley and the rest of the media analysts out there have caught up with us. Thanks so much for tuning in to the House of Takes late night show for a Friday night. This is our very first ever late night show on a Friday night. So once again, thanks for tuning in as we look to hopefully make this a regular show on a regular basis. As for what we have coming up for you this evening, it was an absolutely full slate of NBA hoops this past evening. Over 14 games in the National Basketball Association. A lot to cover. We're going to get through most of what went down on a Friday night in the association, as well as, if we have some time towards the end of the show, we'll bounce back over to the National Football League, and I'll give you some thoughts on good old Aaron Rodgers, Pat McAfee, Jimmy Kimmel, and of course the Epstein list. I've got all of that, and as always, trust me, a whole lot more coming up on the big show this evening. To the association we go, and I have posted a picture here of the Indiana Pacers, who as a team tonight scored over 150 points for the fourth time this season. They're just one game away from setting an NBA record for scoring over 150 points. The team on its own had had actually 50 assists in the game tonight. An absolutely fantastic game by the Indiana Pacers as they won easily. I mean, easily this evening. The final score was just outrageous. 150 to 116. The Atlanta Hawks look like a team that is officially grounded. Elsewhere around the association, the Celtics easily took care of the Utah Jazz. Not too much to talk about here. 126 to 97 was the final. The Cavs handled the Wizards easily. Like, none of these scores are in any way surprising until we get to the next one. But Cavs win 114 to 90. The Brooklyn Nets actually took down the OKC Thunder in Brooklyn tonight. 124 to 115 was the final score in that game. And when you look at the box score, if you were to pull up the box score of this game and you looked at the Thunder side of the fence, see that Jalen Williams had 20, which is becoming a norm for the Santa Clara product. And then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had 34, which is also a norm for that particular team. And Chet Holmgren is always scoring between 15 and 20 points. It was a typical offensive scoring game for the OKC Thunder. And in fact, this game was really, honestly, a bit of a blowout. And OKC made a bit of a comeback in the fourth quarter. As for the Brooklyn Nets, it seems as if whenever the Brooklyn Nets win a couple games in a row, it almost always involves a good Spencer Dinwiddie game. And that was the case once again tonight. 23 points, 4 assists, and 3 rebounds in the game. And a special shout out to Nick Claxton, who had 13 rebounds, 3 assists, and a whopping 23 points in the game. This was a bit of a matchup problem for the Thunder down the stretch. But as I mentioned, they did make a bit of a comeback in the fourth quarter of tonight's game. Now, moving on, the Knicks took down the 76ers tonight in Philadelphia. 128-92 was the final score there. And it was your typical sort of Jalen Brunson game. Julius Randle, from a points perspective, didn't necessarily have a great game. But Quentin Grimes has played very well since the big trade went down. It was a all-around game by the New York Knicks. As for the 76ers, it was a typical scoring performance by Joel Embiid, who had 30, but had very little help outside of Tyrese Maxey and Kelly Oubre Jr. Not a lot of bench help. And the other big issue for the Philadelphia 76ers is somebody forgot to give Tobias Harris a cup of coffee before the start of the game, because it was yet another poor performance by Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris at this point seems to put together maybe 2 or 3 good games in a row, and then he falls asleep. This was another game in which Tobias Harris, for the kind of money he's making, shouldn't be falling asleep. 3 rebounds, 4 assists, and 5 points in the game for good old Tobias Harris tonight. Elsewhere around the association now, if anybody's followed our House of Takes podcast and our House of Takes NBA show, you know I've been singing the praises of the Los Angeles Clippers. As soon as they were able to get that first victory with James Harden on the team, as soon as the Los Angeles Clippers, as much as this pains me to say, were able to start actually playing like a team. And a big part of that was, of course, Russell Westbrook making the decision that he wanted to move to the bench. He wasn't told to move to the bench. And in the NBA, when players actually later in their careers are willing to do something like that, that makes a big difference. I mean, Russell Westbrook looked around and he saw himself in a starting lineup with Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and James Harden, and he said, let me just go play with the second team. Let me lead the second team. 5 assists, 5 rebounds, a lot of hustle in 22 minutes of play for Russell Westbrook tonight. And of course, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard had their typical games. Zubac continues to be the right fit for this Los Angeles Clippers team. This team really looks like the best team in the association right now, 22-12. But don't just take it from me. Let's send it over to Charles Barkley and hear what he had to say last night about the Los Angeles Clippers.
It's the Los Angeles Clippers. I gotta say this about Kawhi Leonard. Yeah,
Bro, you said this the last 7 years in a row.
If Kawhi got hurt, remember they were going to beat the Suns if Kawhi got hurt. It's a difference.
No, it's not. It's the same thing.
Let me just say this, Ernie. And I was telling Kenny this in the back. Kawhi Leonard is amazing. Like, if he's healthy, he's one of the 5 best basketball players in the world. Like, going back to last year, when they beat the Suns, they were going to beat the Suns. If he didn't get hurt, they would have beat the Suns. If you go back and look, he's playing as well as anybody in basketball right now. If you actually, like, I watched the Clippers play 3 times in the last week. Kawhi Leonard is playing as good a basketball as anybody in the NBA.
And I'm a Clipper bandwagon.
They've won 13 of their last 15.
I'm a Clipper bandwagon.
The Harden thing is
Yeah,
working.
they're not. You know, you're a
Westbrook's
Laker.
accepted his role.
Absolutely love Shaq clapping there. And of course, you know, anybody that's lived in Los Angeles certainly understands the rich history between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Los Angeles Clippers. The richness of the history clearly goes to the Los Angeles Lakers, and the history portion of it all is really that the Los Angeles Clippers traditionally have been a bad franchise. Now, of course, that changed pretty dramatically with the ownership change. The fact is, the Los Angeles Clippers are moving into a brand new $1 billion building next year or later, or at some point this year after, or next season, I should say. And they have really turned things around, at least from an organizational standpoint. This team, as it stands today, and as Charles Barkley put it, if Kawhi Leonard had stayed healthy against the Phoenix Suns last year during the playoffs, the Clippers would have won. Now add in, you know, Russell Westbrook coming off of the bench and leading the B team. Add in James Harden, who can have a bad game in the playoffs, and it's okay because you've got Paul George and Kawhi Leonard there. You've got Norman Powell to pick up the slack with the second team as well. And of course, you've got Zubac, you've got Mason Plumlee, you've got Tice. There is you've got Man. It is a deep team. And if everybody can remain basically healthy throughout the playoffs, the Los Angeles Clippers are absolutely, in my opinion, the team to beat coming out of the Western Conference. And in fact, I said this a couple days ago, but by the end of January, when you pick up a fish wrap or you look at a fish wrap's website or you receive an email, you're going to see that the team atop the NBA power rankings by the end of January will be the Los Angeles Clippers. They are, in fact, playing so well at this point. As Ernie Johnson pointed out, 13 out of 15 wins for the Los Angeles Clippers. They are clearly the hottest team in the association today. All right, so quickly moving on through the rest of the association. Zach LaVine came back, played pretty good. Bulls beat the Hornets. Timberwolves took care of the Houston Rockets on the road fairly easily tonight. It was a blowout victory. Cat 22, Ant-Man 24. Rudy Gobert, 12 rebounds and 13 points in the game. And Jaden McDaniels has been improving dramatically on the offensive side of the ball. He pitched in 16 off the bench. Naz Reid with 16 as well in just 25 minutes of play. On the Houston Rockets side, not too much to discuss. Jabari Smith, 16, and Şengün, 19, and Jalen Green, 20. Amen Thompson, the rookie, actually scored himself 20 minutes of play. He's going to have to do better. 6 rebounds, which was nice, and 6 points. But definitely, as far as rookies go, he's got a ways to go before I think they're really happy with that draft pick there in Houston. No Luka Doncic tonight. Not a problem at all when you're playing the Portland Trailblazers at home. 131-103 was the final. Nuggets lost at home to the Orlando Magic. This game was just fascinating to watch because Paolo Banchero is proven that he should be an NBA All-Star. Just another great game, a triple-double, in fact, 10 rebounds, 11 assists, and 32 points in the game. Jalen Suggs pitched in 27, and Cole Anthony pitched in 23. Like when when Cole Anthony does that and Jalen Suggs does that, um, and they're without Franz Wagner in the game on the road, and they're able to win. Franz's brother Mo pitched in 19 and had 11 rebounds. Like I keep thinking, Mo could be starting on several other teams in the association right now. This Orlando Magic team is for real. They proved it once again. They took down the Denver Nuggets in Denver, improving their record to 20-15 on the season. To the late night games we go. The Suns took down the Heat fairly easily tonight. 113-97 was the final. The Lakers got flat out outplayed by Jaren Jackson and the rest of the Memphis Grizzlies tonight in the fourth quarter. Despite the fact that LeBron scored 31, the Lakers were up big at one point in the second quarter of the game, but by halftime, they were just up by a point. And then it just basically turned into young legs being better than old legs, as well as young legs that don't have Cam Reddish and Taurean Prince on their teams were better tonight, which is not terribly surprising. AD had a great game as well, 29 points for him. Austin Reeves, who's been moved back into the starting lineup, did what he does, even if he's in the starting lineup or not. 19 points, a bunch of assists, and numerous rebounds in the game for Austin Reeves as well. But like when you really sort of take a step back and you look at what happened in this Los Angeles Laker game tonight, as I mentioned, Austin Reeves, he had 12 assists in the game. He had 7 rebounds. You can't put this loss on Austin. You can't put it on LeBron's 32, Anthony Davis's 31. Yeah, Taurean Prince sort of showed up tonight. He scored 20 in 35 minutes of, he scored 10 in 35 minutes of play. This is a roster problem that Darvin Ham and the Los Angeles Lakers have. This is not necessarily a Darvin Ham issue all around, though I think Darvin Ham's decision to start both Cam Reddish and Taurean Prince in the starting lineup is a huge mistake. You can't have both of those players who have such lackluster performances game in and game out be part of your starting five. The Lakers are one of those teams in the NBA where it's safe to say are in desperate need of a shakeup, a roster shakeup. It is time for Rob Pelinka to pull off some magic like he did last year. And this time around, I don't consider Malik Beasley the magic that he needs to pull off to improve this Los Angeles Laker team. It is a team on the downward spiral. It is, as I mentioned, absolutely a team in need of a shakeup. As for the Grizzly in this game, Marcus Smart, one of the great pickups of the offseason, 29 points for him. Jaren Jackson, 31. Desmond Bane was huge in the fourth quarter, 24. And Ja Morant played extremely well. 7 rebounds, 7 assists. He brought the energy tonight, 21 points. They are now 6-3 since Ja Morant's return. They're 12-23. They're just 5 games out of a play-in spot, which is really got to be their first target that they go to. I mean, there's still half of a season left. Basically, they need to win, 65%, almost 70% of their games. moving forward. But I think that's definitely something this team, if they can bring the energy night in and night out, they could certainly win 7 out of 3 games in the association. And wrapping up a big evening in the NBA tonight, a huge evening, 14 games in the association. The Warriors tried to blow another lead. This time it was against the Detroit Pistons at home. But Steph Curry was big down the stretch. 113-109 was the final there. The Sacramento Kings had an absolutely huge lead over the Toronto Raptors in Toronto. Toronto made a huge comeback in the second half of the game. They made it very, very close. The Kings held on to win, if you can say held on to win, 135-130, and the beam was lit in Sacramento tonight. That is a fairly quick recap of your National Basketball Association on the House of Takes late night show. Finally tonight, I wanted to talk just a little bit about the whole Aaron Rodgers, Jimmy Kimmel fiasco. And I thought one of the best ways to start with that would be to actually play some video from our good friend Pat McAfee. So here we
go. And you're having conversations.
Letting it fly.
They can certainly lead to some places that cause like international news and things like that. And whenever there's accusations made about people, that can lead to lawsuits. Now, listen, I've been in one before.
Yes.
With Brett Favre. Now, how'd that case end? Well, it ended with me having to read a letter basically stating that I know nothing that anybody else doesn't know publicly already, that I'm not in the know for that whole thing. And then that was kind of disappeared, but that was a big thing for a long time. Yeah. How did that come? Well, we just started making jokes about stuff. We started talking shit about stuff. And then in our show, I think that is a good part of what we do, is we're able to kind of just roll with the punches. We're able to have a good time. We're all rather invested and studied in what's happening around the sports world at all times. Caitlin Clark last night.
Hell yeah. Unreal.
Wait till you hear about Luke Littler today.
Dog.
So we are very much in that world. So everybody that comes on the stage has to be able to like basically keep up with where we're headed. There's no there's no formal outline of what we're going to talk about, how we're going to talk about it. There's no A block, B block, C block. There's no scheduled conversations. There's no scheduled debates. There's no topics for you to think about before you get in there. There is just an opportunity to talk about damn near everything for 3.5 hours. And in doing so, the upside of that is some magic can come that you never knew was going to come.
Absolutely.
Good times can be had, laughs can be had, especially when you're rolling on like 2 hours of sleep like we were yesterday after the Rose Bowl. You can have a blast. And on the flip side, there could be some things that were certainly probably, I mean, we're going to have to hear from Aaron on that, meant to be shit talk joke that can then become something that is obviously a very serious allegation that then leads to a massive overnight story, one in which, put baby down, sleep, haven't seen her in a while, and then I pick up my phone. Oh, boy. But I can see exactly why Jimmy Kimmel felt the way he felt, especially with his position. But I think Aaron was just trying to talk shit. Now, did it go too far? In a lot of people, Jimmy Kimmel certainly said that was the case. We and I immediately upon it happening, trying to be like, ooh, you know. But that is Aaron and Jimmy. They've been...
All right. Look, Pat McAfee and the good folks over the Pat McAfee show do put on a fantastic show day in and day out. Let's be honest, though, for a second. And that is to say that as great as a quarterback is that Aaron Rodgers has been through his career, his in the clubhouse, so to speak, antics that we're officially aware of, his stance on what a on COVID and a vaccination is, the sort of Bill Clinton definition of the word is sort of what Aaron Rodgers did with his stance on vaccinations. He had his own version of a vaccination. So, I always do the big grain of salt whenever Aaron Rodgers opens his mouth. Uh, less about things he'll say about the National Football League and more about things he'll say about society as a whole, more about things he'll say about healthcare and how quickly he's been able to recover miraculously from his ACL injury, unlike anybody else has ever recovered before. I don't know. Maybe Aaron Rodgers has some of the has some of the Hulk in him. I'm just saying. So Aaron Rodgers historically, and we've had enough of Aaron Rodgers stories off the field for 10 plus years now. And of course, the internet is a completely different beast today than it was 10 years ago. But if you want to look for them, they're out there. Aaron Rodgers has said a lot of things that, quite frankly, can't necessarily be trusted. And as somebody that takes Aaron Rodgers with a big grain of salt, as I mentioned, when he brought up Jimmy Kimmel's name in the Epstein list, I was like, oh my gosh, because that isn't just saying, I thought I saw some aliens in the sky the other night. That's not saying I believe in aliens. That's not saying I was really just hanging out in a dark room for 2 weeks and I had all intentions there of coming back to the Green Bay Packers. But then, of course, they never called because, Aaron, you're in a cave or it wasn't really a cave, but Aaron, you're in a dark room for 2 weeks. And the organization had finally made its decision. It was time to move on. Plus, you wanted to move on. I remember your last game against the Detroit Lions at home. And as you and one of your favorite wide receivers of all time stood there and turned around and took one last big glimpse at Lambeau Field before you walked off, it was clear to everybody that saw that you were moving on from the Green Bay Packers in one way or another. There was no mystery at all about that. So when Aaron Rodgers brought up his Jimmy Kimmel might be on the Epstein list statement, and of course there had been a feud going on. So don't think that this wasn't something that Aaron Rodgers had not planned on bringing up at some point during the Pat McAfee show. Don't think for a second that it was, as Pat McAfee would put it, to some extent, their whole show is just flows based on whatever the conversation is, and there's no A block or B block or C block. I'm sure the guys over at the Pat McAfee show get together and have a general idea of what they're talking about. But on Aaron Rodgers Tuesdays, I'm also sure that the Pat McAfee team probably doesn't really have a tremendous amount of faith that Aaron Rodgers is not going to go off the rails at some point. It is why people actually tune in to the Pat McAfee show on Tuesdays, because Aaron Rodgers used to be must-see YouTube. It is must-see TV. Look, the Pat McAfee show draws some over 300,000 viewers a day on ESPN, not to mention the hundreds of thousands of viewers it gets every day on YouTube. Sure, ESPN would prefer that its ratings were a little bit better on ESPN because it's got First Take, which is bringing it north of 500,000 viewers when that show ends and then passes the baton over to Pat McAfee. But it's not surprising to me that there would be a drop-off from First Take to the Pat McAfee show just simply because of the time of day. I mean, who is really home that much to watch so much sports television together in a row? It is a natural thing for there to be a drop-off. But once again, when you put the entire package together and you include everything that they do on YouTube, and when you look at how Pat McAfee skyrocketed, the show skyrocketed, it did really, really well. And then they started doing Aaron Rodgers Tuesdays. And if you go back and you look at the ratings on YouTube and you look at the views on YouTube, the highest ranked, highest viewed videos that have been on the Pat McAfee show over the last couple of years all have Aaron Rodgers' name on it. So it doesn't surprise me that the Pat McAfee show and Pat McAfee were taken aback. They have obviously been trained now how to defuse a bomb that Aaron Rodgers lobs over the fence, which is exactly what they did in a masterful way. The question remains, what will ESPN do about all of this? Because take away those Aaron Rodgers Tuesdays from the Pat McAfee show would be a very, very bad thing from a ratings perspective. So what should and what can ESPN do? Where are the the morals, if you will, of the mouse in all of this? Will we see any changes, or will Disney and the Pat McAfee show try to just let this story die? Or will Aaron Rodgers address his statement, which was clear slander? It is a different thing to say Jimmy Kimmel may be on the Epstein list, and I saw an alien last night in the northwestern quadrant of the Manhattan sky. All right. That is it for tonight's House of Takes, a late night show. I want to thank everybody for tuning into the big show tonight. And we'll look for more shows. Will be coming out soon. And of course, if you haven't had a chance to subscribe yet to the Big House of Takes channel, please absolutely go ahead and do so. For the House of Takes late night show, I'm Dave DeBaugh, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing day.